Part 1. The logical answer to why I'm a Christian. Logically, out of all the options, it makes the most sense to me. Now, some people may find that ridiculous. Oh, you got Noah and the boats, you got the talking snake, you have God becoming a man, yada yada yada. If you can accept that God made everything in the beginning, the planets, the stars, the universe, the other miracles would seem like child's play to him. I believe an extremely intelligent and powerful being kick-started everything in the beginning. Naturalistic explanations to life's origins and the meaning of life don't gel with me. Francis Collins is an incredibly intelligent scientist and a Christian who led the Human Genome Project. He stated that science is great for understanding the physical world, but he felt the questions of life's existence and origin and meaning should be left to philosophy. And I completely agree with that statement. So that begs the question, why do I choose Christianity and not Buddhism or Islam or Hinduism or Zoroastrianism? The reason is because I feel Christianity's holy book shows its divine authority by fulfilled prophecies. I believe the Bible separates itself from any other holy book because of the accuracy of future events through prophecy. Now, some may argue some of these prophecies could be self-fulfilling prophecies, which the Quran is notoriously guilty of. Or it could be that these writers later wrote prophecies into the text after the fact of the supposed fulfilled prophecy. The ones I want to address are ones that don't fall into those categories. Here are some examples. Cyrus the Great is undeniably one of the greatest and influential rulers of all time. He was also greatly adopted by the Jews because he liberated them from the Babylonians and gave them freedom to worship and led them to rebuild the Jewish temple. Isaiah 44 verse 28 mentions him. That saith of Cyrus, he is my shepherd and shall perform all my pleasure. Even saying to Jerusalem, thou shalt be built, and to the temple, thy foundation shall be laid. What's interesting is that the book of Isaiah mentions him 150 years before he was a Persian king. Now, you could argue that this is self-fulfilling, but you would have to argue that a man named Cyrus would have to become the ruler of the entire known world and liberate the Jews. If Cyrus the Great read this at a young age, what would be his motivation of fulfilling it? Just to prove the Bible? Cyrus wasn't a believer, but rather a pagan, so he would have no interest in backing biblical infallibility. The Jews would offer no prestige to his reign other than thanking him for their liberation. The Jews were small fish compared to Cyrus's unprecedented ambitious plan of kingship. Cyrus is mentioned several times in the Bible, and we know he fulfilled this ancient prophecy through historical documents such as the Cyrus Cylinder. I even referenced this in one of my ancient history papers, and my anti-Christian professor didn't comment on this when he is usually leaping to dismiss the Bible. Here's another example. Ezekiel 26 describes in great detail the destruction of the trade city Tyre. King Nebuchadnezzar is prophesied to destroy the city, and then its remains would be cast into the sea. Well, the city was destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar, but the rest of the prophecy would be fulfilled later by Alexander the Great. When Alexander came on the scene, he was determined to capture enemies holed up on an island off the coast of Tyre. He noticed all these rocks and debris around him, so he began throwing them in the sea to build a bridge to the island, or like a causeway to the island. It worked, and he could capture his enemies. Unbeknownst to him, he fulfilled the Ezekiel prophecy because the debris were the remains of Tyre. He had no motivation to fulfill prophecy because he was pagan, a very anti-Jewish practice. The book of Ezekiel was written between 587 through 586 BC and fulfilled by Alexander in roughly 333-332 BC. Another, Genesis 12:7, says that God gives Israel to the Jews as a covenant and that it is their land forever. Considering how few Jews there are in the world, how far they have been scattered, and how no other nation has done this, this is peculiar because it has happened twice. Most famously is the reinstatement in 1948 between Jews and Israel, the other reinstatement in the 60s. Also very briefly is the prophecy of the four great kingdoms in the book of Daniel of Babylonian, Medo-Persian, Greek, and Roman empires. The statue of various materials, gold, bronze, clay, etc., represents the different ages of bronze, iron, silver, etc. These kingdoms would cover over a period of thousands of years, thus making it unlikely as being self-fulfilling considering the involvement of various leaders, differing government policies, and most obviously a lack of motivation by pagan leaders to fulfill this biblical prophecy. Regarding the vagueness of the prophecies, I feel that the Cyrus prophecies are rather specific. It'd be one thing if it stated that an influential man would serve the blessed people, but we are given a name, what he will do, and how he will affect the Jewish people. The statue of Daniel also explicitly says that the materials that encompass the figure are great kingdoms and identifiable products, gold, iron, that distinguish each rulership and age. Daniel just comes out and says it. The Jewish reinstatement, if you don't believe is divine, you must admit is rather unprecedented and very unique in the historical timeline. Also, yes, Tyre still exists today, but the location of ancient Tyre, as referenced in Ezekiel, is only ancient remains today. You might would even argue that after Alexander, the Romans would soon find use for it later, and the Hellenistic period did utilize it. However, if you notice Ezekiel 26, the destruction would be gradual. Many nations would come against it like waves that repeatedly lap until destruction is complete. This mainland area is uninhabited, and other parts of ancient Tyre are mere remains. One port is silted over, and the rest that is inhabited is for various other services and activities like fishing, which Ezekiel 26 said it would be, and or it is the new location and not the original part of Tyre as referenced in Ezekiel. Modern Tyre, mostly expanded from Old Tyre, is hardly what it was in ancient history. Modern Tyre is a completely different animal, even if they call it Tyre. In the Bible, it states that the mark of a true prophet or word of God is one that is given and will not fail. Now, why would the Old Testament writers risk the credibility of their holy book with mere predictions, considering the unlikeliness that the flourishing city of Tyre would become a run/fishing spot? Other holy books are essentially riddled with vague or self-fulfilling prophecies. Other holy books just don't have any prophecies, or they have clearly wrong prophecies. The Quran says that we are a blood clot when we are conceived. The Mormon and the Jehovah's Witness faith have failed at predicting Christ's return in the past. The context of these prophecies can't be explained away as mere poetic devices. They are just wrong. This is where the Bible stands alone in its regard to its prophecies. Check out part 2 of Why I'm a Christian, and don't be a label, be an original.